All right, hi everybody. This is the nephew SIG Automation Meeting for August 9th. I'll display the agenda. Okay, so I guess a few items. I have one quick one. Yesterday I created a new project for R2. There's not really much in it yet, but I started going through the issues that we have and putting them into the backlog. But we'll have to figure out and there's more than this, I just haven't gone through them all yet. We'll have to, and then we have from a couple weeks ago, we went through this whole list of different items we want to cover, and we said we'd put them all in a backlog. So that's what I'm going to do over the next day or two, and then we can take a look at sprints. And as I've said before, I'm highly doubtful that we're going to do a lot of new functionality in R2 given the time frame, but we'll manage it through the sprints, and we'll deliver what's ready on the date that it's ready. Yeah, Sandeep.
Yeah, hi everyone. This package dependency controller, which you have mentioned, is it R2 scope?
I kind of doubt it. We'll probably just get. Did you say is it R2 scope? Is that what you said? Yeah. So what we talked about last time when we had this longer discussion was that there are things that this group we see as technical debt or obvious next steps in platform level capabilities that are necessary for any use case going forward, gaps basically. And that's what we kind of are putting, what I'm so far going to be putting into that board. Then there's the stuff that SIG1 wants that's more strategic, and that's still in the planning process. So we want to get rolling on the stuff that we know about. Whether we deliver a package dependency controller within the time frame we're talking about, maybe something simple that does certain simple dependencies. I don't know. Like that's a good question, and we'll just have to manage it through the sprints. But right now it's more about constructing a backlog. They're not necessarily all going to actually end up in R2.
Yeah, so you have created issues, so has someone taken it? Like, is it possible that we can take it? Is it
Absolutely, we can. I mean, there's a bunch of that would be wonderful. I think that we should maybe meet up separately to discuss that. There's a bunch of issues, or just do it on Slack or whatever. There's a bunch of issues associated with it and some bunch of different ideas of approaches. So that would be awesome.
Yeah, we'll discuss in separate Slack or something with you and Vim about design and all those things which we have in mind and whatever we have understand with that. So yeah, just wanted to make sure just handle it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, great. Okay, that's all I wanted to say about that. That's really, like I said, about the stuff we know about. And now, Simon, yeah.
Yeah, quick question. So from the R2 board, we can just pick up stories again, right? They might require some additional discussion and so on, or planning, but we could just go through the board and see what we can pick up.
Yes, it is not populated yet, but yes, I mean, right, like, so as I see it, there's 2 or 3 different ways things end up in R2. One is that SIG1 wants them, and there are people who are willing to work on them and deliver them because, that's important to SIG1 and whatever organizations want those things. 2 is SIG2 wants them, and 3 is a contributor wants them, right? So like, if there are things, even if they're not necessarily a priority for SIG1 or SIG2, and you're just interested in them, or you have a particular use. I mean, you're part of SIG2, so right, in that sense, it is interested you. So anyway, I'm babbling, but yes, that'll be no problem. It's not populated yet. I only have I'm still going through the issue list. I haven't gone through this list in the board yet, in the document yet. And of course, other people can add stuff too. So that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think I'll pick something up from there. Or I am currently verifying if I found a bug, and otherwise I'll do the bug first. But if not, I'll pick something up from here.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Simon. Okay, with that, Wim, you had some.
Yeah, so it's actually Joseph. I don't know, is Joseph on the call?
Yeah, hi. Hi.
Hi. Hey.
Yeah, I'm there. Yeah. Okay.
So
Maybe, yeah, you can.
So I mean the context, to put the context in place. So in SIG2 there is let's say a desire to actually include some pieces for the radio, so like the ROM. And so I asked them which software would we use and stuff like that, because we use 35GC for the core so far, right? So, and then Joseph, I was asking whether someone had software, but I think Joseph basically pointed out that he has done some work already. So I think the goal is that, I think, Joseph, if you can present what you are doing and what we are talking about, to see whether we can leverage that, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So let me start. And so basically we are, you can hear me well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So basically we are interested in how we can use Nephew for RAN deployment. So we were kind of exploring what open source RAN we could use, and I found OAI could be useful in that sense, because it was easy to use, and probably it also had the RF simulator part, so it is easy to bring it up in any virtual machine. So that was one of the things that was easy for us. So that's why we thought we would start with OAI, and I took the help of Sagar from OAI as well. So he guided me with a Helm installation for RAN. So, so basically we took that as the base, and then made a custom controller based on that, and we deployed it. And for that we used a very simple CRD, not very fancy, just to see if it is working and how we can proceed. So the next step, basically, let me share my screen. I have a small set of.
Are you able to share? Or do we need to give you permission? Does it let you share?
Yeah, allowed me. Yeah, you
Okay.
can see my screen.
No, I'm not seeing.
No.
Oh, because I'm still sharing. Let me stop sharing.
Okay.
Here we go. Now I can see it.
Yeah, so this is a couple of slides that we're trying to make, and I just try to put both actually, like two scopes for R2. One is mainly focusing on architecture and requirement for R2 and probably beyond R2. So the WG2 as part of SIG1, we could work on that. And as part of development, to actually start looking at what open source RAN and NFC can use for demonstrations and validation. So we started with OAI, but if we need to explore other things, we had checked, but there is, I thought OAI would be the best as how based on the simulator availability. But if there are other suggestions also we could look at. So step is to create basically a sample CRD and deploy it. So this part we did. The second part of using the Nephew framework as such, we are yet to do. So that is our next step basically. And parallelly, we could further discuss in WG2 meetings on what specific CRDs for RAN we can make. And if you select an open source RAN like OAI, then what OAI supports, we can analyze and see, and try to prioritize those CRD definitions for demonstrations, and while we make the actual CRD for RAN. So that is what these are just my thoughts on how we could look at the RAN aspect. Yeah, so current status, like I said, is we have deployed using RF simulator and sample CRD. And all the configurations, we had some working configurations which we are hard coded into the controller right now. Next steps, we are looking at making it more configurable and use a specific RAN CRD to match the capability of OAI, the current capability of OAI, and try to make a CRD, like in terms of throughput, if that is possible, how we map it to CPU configuration, if that is possible. So that we need to explore more based on the capability of OAI. And if so, I think Sagar has already looking at controllers for OAI core. So we could probably show OAI RAN plus OAI core, or we could look at an integration of what is available in current Nephew. Yeah, and if required, these are questions that I have not really decided yet whether to do this last two steps, whether to explore more other open source RAN if required. This is the brief of what we were thinking with respect to RAN. Any
okay.
questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions. So a few things come to mind. One, the OAI also has a core, right? Should we, what was, since unfortunately I didn't, I haven't reviewed that meeting yet. What are we looking at for, are we talking about trying to onboard another open source vendor as part of trying to, that I know there's talk about working on vendor onboarding. So that might be an opportunity to also show a RAN from OAI working with two different cores. That would be kind of cool. So that would be my first question is, I don't know if you're the right person to answer that, or that's more to the whole group. Would you consider onboarding?
So John, maybe let me also, so I think there is desire indeed for SIG 1 to have more vendors, right? And that's true for both RAN as well as for core.
Okay.
There is an action, I mean, I took the action for Nokia, right? But there's an action even to try to get a commercial version. So far, I'm not successful, but that doesn't stop us, in my view, from using OI, because I mean, everything we look at, we could actually see what did we do wrong, or what do we have to enhance to make them work. So in general, for me, whether it's commercial or let's say vendor specific or open source, in my view, I couldn't care less, because we would like to onboard anything without problems, right? So that's the objective at the end of the day. But so there is a desire, but there was a particular, so the radio is a particular desire from SIG 2 because of the fact that this is a missing piece, right, for a complete telco.
So then my other question on the RAN side is, given that it's substantially, as I understand it, a substantially higher scale, many more sites, one of the things we made some certain simplifying assumptions in R1, like one repo to one workload cluster. And I don't know that tens of thousands of repos is really a scalable type of, is something possible? Maybe it is, I don't know. One of the questions I would have, and doesn't need to be answered now, it's more like things we need to explore, would be what needs to change? What different approach might we need there? We have a few different ways, like, for example, one of the reasons we use a repo and not like a bunch of directories is because of the way Git works. So we can actually back things with OCI instead. Git pulls the whole repository. So if you have a repository with 1,000 clusters, every cluster gets 1,000 clusters worth of configuration. Whereas Git, OCI would let you pull individual packages, just like container image. You can pull individual container images. So we can back it with OCI instead, which might be more scalable. The other question is, would we see variants on a per RAN site basis, or do we expect all variants to be captured at runtime, so we don't need to generate individual package revisions for each RAN site, but instead we can say there's this package variant goes to this 1,000 RAN sites. So those would be some of the questions I'd want to understand and answer to understand how we scale it. But yeah, this sounds great. And there's a lot of new problems here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had some other question with respect to the work that you're doing. Is would you be able to share already the CRDs that you are using just to get a sense on? Because I mean, if we really want to do it, I think we could kick off, let's say, some discussion on this to see. I mean, it's good that you are exploring it, but it's also good to see what are the missing pieces that we have in order to, let's say, enhance the capabilities. Like John pointed out a few, maybe there is, we have to do some refactoring on the APIs or the CRDs that we defined, all that thing. So there is this, I think, issue that we have right now is that today there's a lot of hard-coded stuff. Probably we have the same issue here. We need to find a mechanism to do that in a, let's say, as seamless as possible integration to get some parameters exposed without trying to define all kinds of APIs with respect to it. So there is a lot of stuff that I think would be very beneficial for what we have done that can be, that would enhance the current framework to be able to support this, right? So as such, I think we could, yeah, I mean, if I can share some stuff, I think it would be good to start some discussions around this to see what we have to do, right? Also, I think a question that I have to run OAI, what is the footprint that we need to do a run? And because is this a VCU VDU or is it all in one?
I think
or is it?
It has both actually. So it has CU/DU type of configuration, and and also Genode. Actually, I can show the demo maybe.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Because also we have to take into account the footprint we need, John, if we are going here, right, for the infrastructure and stuff like that. We probably need to spin up some clusters one way or another. So this has a lot of implications across the board from how we do stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of brings in, maybe we need to, like right now, everything's simulated in one VM, like maybe we need to, start to address what we want to do anyway, which is how we break this out. I mean, obviously you can do it now. It's just a very manual process. So, Sagar.
Yeah. To your, I was thinking, excuse me. Sorry, John. So to your question, I was thinking whether is there a way to group these configurations? I think there may be an opportunity for RAN. I think in some cases, the DUs and RUs are deployed together. In some cases, they are deployed away from each other. That sometimes CU is also with DU. So there are certain permutations, but within those, I think we have an opportunity to group and manage scale that way.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I can also answer. Yes, typically the deployment, John, is you have, there will be variants, right? The question is, I mean, the really large scale, if you go to 100,000 and stuff like that, then you're really at the tower level, right? So I don't know, our first use case probably is going to be, I don't know whether, so that we call it like C-RAN or D-RAN. So D is really distributed. So you have a cloud on a per tower basis, if you will. So that's how we call that. So there you have, I mean, in North America, I think it's even 100,000 or something like that. In China, it's even bigger than that. In Europe, it's like 30,000 in the worst case, right? So, but then so the more centralized ones are, then, okay, we are talking potentially still thousands, but not 10,000s. Just to give you an order of magnitude, right? So it's probably different per country, but that's kind of the way you have to look at it. And then in there you have, there will be some variants, right? Because you have rural and you have, yeah. So urban and rural areas are a bit different. From a high level point of view, there is more than that, but there will be variations.
Yeah, and one more challenge would be some of the workloads are near real time. Sorry, I'm under weather. Sorry if I'm sounding a bit crazy. So it's some of the workloads are the real-time requirements. So they may have a specialized hardware. For example, there could be a GPU on the DU side, or there could be a accelerator. So some kind of accelerator, either DPU, GPU, or something like that, or SRIV. So that's and maybe a real-time kernel as well. So I mean, those things are also something. I would say in case of RAN, it is a little bit more complicated compared to the core because of these requirements.
So, right, I mean, I don't know that it's for R2, but that starts to ask the question of, so what we have right now for scheduling a workload to a cluster is this very simple label selector. Now, you can leverage that and you can apply labels to clusters and then make use of them, but probably a better strategy is a controller that's more intelligent and can, say, gather the accumulated capabilities and capacity and available capacity of all the different clusters, you know, especially if, I guess it depends sort of, if you've got a geographical requirement and there's only one there, then that's what you do. But I imagine there are cases where some scheduling of some sort across clusters would be useful. I think we've talked about that in the past. And obviously I don't think that's an R2 thing, but it would be nice to be able to sort of demonstrate it conceptually at least.
Yeah, and there are some, by the way, in SIG1. By tomorrow, I'm going to discuss some of this. I took an action on Tuesday to clarify a little bit because it's unclear to the people how we do it. But like the guys from DT has put some requirements in the SIG in the R2 to get a better view on the infra versus NF stuff. So I'm going to present what we did.
Okay.
But yeah, so the scheduling is one of the things that we didn't. We took a very basic approach. So this might, I will see what happens tomorrow. But yeah. So Sagar, I think you're
of me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, actually, I wanted to say, which John asked before, you know, about the resource usage. So to begin with, because we always aim for something more tangible, let's say. So one VM would be enough, which we have used for R1. That would be perfectly enough. And especially for if we'll start with more assimilated RAN, as we use in UV ransom or as UV ransom, the resource consumption is a little bit higher because the way OAI is designed is much different than how UV ransom works. So the resource consumption would be much higher, but one VM would be sufficient with the 8 vCPUs and the RAM which we have. I'm already testing on that too. And
Okay.
in terms of resource consumption, I haven't faced any issues. But actually, it depends also if we go for a split RAN scenario where we have CUCP and the DU. I mean, just a bit will be different, but I don't think that's going to be problematic too either, because I again test everything in a VM whenever I test in OAI. So it's still okay for a simulated scenario to begin with.
By the way, and Sagar, when you say it's okay, you're talking about one RAN or more than one?
So I'm only saying for one. If you do more than
if
one,
you
then
do 2 or 3 or 4, is your statement still hold or not?
No, it does not hold at all. No, then we need more CPUs. Because let's say if I want to code something, in simulated scenario, the UE consumes more or less 1.5 CPU, and the G-Node also consumes more or less that much amount of CPU. And if we split, it's the DU which consumes more or less that CPU, because the CUCP and CUUP, they hardly consume anything in simulated scenario, because simulated scenarios are not really designed to pass high traffic. They are for functional testing and see the functionality, how the whole RAN works in a simulated environment.
And if the CPU is not really there, right? So we share it. Will it fail, or is it really like a DPDK type of approach where you basically take the whole thing, or you?
Not really.
Or you can.
No, it's not really pinned anywhere. You know, it's shared.
Okay.
It should.
So in other words, I
um,
mean, you
yeah.
require a virtual CPU, but if you really don't get it, it might still work, but of course performance will be bad.
Exactly. So functionally, it will be fine. You will be able to see you'll be able to see the pings and you'll have something there. But in terms of performance, you might have some issues. But anyways, in a simulated environment, we don't really go for, high throughput kind of a testing.
Sure. Yeah, but that's not our goal. I think that's not our mission
Exactly.
necessarily, at least here. We are more looking at the automation side of the house, right? So we have to ensure that we have all the constructs to be able to support that. So I'm not so concerned about throughput, to be honest. Yeah.
Sure, me neither. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
but if
All
you
right.
have to, but if you have to show some kind of demonstration in terms of intent, like for example, throughput, you want, let's say 100 MB or some kind of performance that you need, right? You want to show an intent, and then if you want to fine tune the CPU, then we need to probably see how much an AI is capable of, and then kind of set the intent accordingly and could demonstrate it probably.
And you're now Joseph, you're talking now more on this let's say closed loop stuff, right? Where you really want to do optimization, dynamic optimization
Yes,
of the
I think
radio,
that would
depending
be,
on
yeah, but
For that-
that's in the future, not right now exactly, but
Yes.
to see.
But for that we could have basically another end-to-end test bed where you basically have a very simple core just to focus on that scenario. I'm just thinking out loud, where you basically focus on the radio and you show the closed loop stuff to see that you do all the magic to be able to optimize. But okay, yeah. But yeah, I understand. So from the moment you do really advanced stuff, you probably need to discuss on how we accommodate that. Okay, makes sense.
Vish, I think you've been waiting a while.
Yeah. Actually, I ended up missing a couple of SIG1 meetings, but I want to make sure, or I wanted to make sure that I don't miss it in the SIG2. Are we still planning to do the same thing you did in SIG1, wherein John and Wim, you guys took the SIG1 requirements and we actually had a slide to understand those. We discussed it here. We understood what the delivery is going to be, so that the opportunity is there for the SIG2 attendees to make sure they understand that and didn't miss out on it.
Yeah, I think we're going to need to, I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in the SIG1 meetings lately either too, just other things going on, but I need to review that and we need to discuss it here and sort of come up with a response. Like there's going to be what we think we can actually deliver versus what they're asking for. And, again, the agreement, I think, from the TSC down is fixed cadence of releases every 6 months, and what lands on the train, or what gets on the train and gets delivered.
Yeah.
If you miss the train, you take the next one. So, we don't know exactly yet. There's some analysis.
Okay,
but
so there will definitely be a review here on the SIG2 automation to understand the requirements and ask for clarification and stuff like that. That will happen in the SIG2 meetings.
Yeah, we'll have to. We'll have to go through, like,
cool.
Ran is the only one, since I haven't gone and reviewed the documents yet, Ran is the only one right now that I know of, because Wim brought it here and Joseph brought it here, but
yeah, I was even afraid to ask that question. Hey, was this
with another one? Like, there's a bunch. What's that?
I was even afraid to ask the question if RAN is a SIG1 requirement asked in R2 timeframe, because I didn't attend them. That is why I was asking the general question. Hey, is this going to be discussed here? And this is part of the discussion.
Yeah. No, there's no promises right now of anything other than there will be a delivery in November. That's the only promise. It could be R1.0.2 as far as I know.
But yeah, so the reason I brought it up is because it's one of the first bullets on their list, right? So which has the use cases of radio. And given that, okay, I didn't know what software we had. I knew I was discussing before with Sagar that we had OI, but we never really discussed. But there's people already working on it. It's great. So that's why maybe, Vish, what we should start doing is to flush out what we can do for the run. I mean, not saying that we will do it, right? But at least we can already start flushing out a little bit what needs to happen in order to then make a call. Because see, I think what I'm understanding is that from a SIG 1 is that Sana is trying to finalize the document, right?
Okay.
So they will come to us, but we will need to make a statement. So we'll have to do this process no matter what, right? So there will going to be a number of things in us. So we have to go through it. So the sooner we start, the better it is. And the reason I took this action is because, okay, whether radio will make the cut or not, I mean, we can start discussing it in SIG 2 independent, because then we gain some time, right? We don't have to wait. So that's why I took the action to start.
Okay. Because I know Bala had actually had some comments about the different combinations of the deployment and all this stuff. So I was thinking, is this all something that has been required by the SIG 1 group? And if this was a context, if this discussion was in the context of the R2 requirements. So I was trying to get that clarified. Again, like I said, I missed some of the SIG 1 meetings, and that is why I was asking for clarification. It's my problem. So thank you for explaining.
Sagar, your hand is up. Is that a stale hand or are you more? Aha, okay. Okay, then that sounds good. It sounds like the plan then, as what I heard was, well, I guess the question, Joseph, I don't know if I heard an answer to, was, can you share what you've done so far, like either in a PR or in a document or something like that? And we can start the discussion around what those CRDs look like.
Yeah, sure. I think probably in the demo, I could show the CRD that I've used. It's a very simple CRD. So maybe I can show it here.
Yeah,
and
you still want to do the demo, Joseph?
Yeah, I mean, if it's required, maybe I'll just show you the
Sure, what I'm seeing right now is just a black screen with a bunch of.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to see now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. So if you see, this is a simple CRD that we made. So the information that we provide here is just the image name and the type of the genode, whether it's a split GNOD or it's an all-in-one GNOD. So based on this, the deployment.
Is this in addition to NF deployment, or just this is the only thing you need to deploy it?
Yeah, right now I just put this. The other configurations are now hard coded in the controller code. So we'll have to see.
Because you need, you need some interfaces, I think, right?
Correct.
So you need some interfaces and things. Yeah, Sagar was pinging me, but I've been busy a little bit, so I'm trying to touch base with him. But maybe Sagar, we can discuss this in Slack or something like that in the open, right? And then everybody is involved and stuff like that, so we can.
Right. Yeah. So I think as for interfaces, I think all of this is required. As you see.
Right.
So all of these configurations get deployed. So if it's a split scenario, you can see that all of it, like CU, CP, CU, UP, DU, and all its corresponding interfaces are deployed. So all of this is currently hard coded in the code. So we'll have to look at exposing these into the series. So
that makes sense. And maybe what we have to start with is like an architectural diagram on how it connects to the rest of the network that we have. If you want, I can share what we did. Today we have basically, we have what I call the default network, and then we have 3 additional networks at the moment. We have one which we call VPC run, which I believe you should connect to, which is N1, N2, N3.
Okay.
And there is a different subnet for N2, then a different subnet for N3, which was a requirement which we added for 3.5GC. And then there is the COPS network, which is the VPC internal, but I don't think it's relevant for you. And then we have the VPC internet, which is the internet for the core, so the DNN. So these are the 3 networks. So I think you should connect. Do you need more than one interface? How many interfaces do you need? Is basically. And we probably need to have a network for customer facing, I think, right? So so where
towards
I don't know
UE.
how. Yeah, for the UE, because today in
UE ransom, UE ransom only has like, yeah. Go
it's
ahead.
internal,
Sorry.
right? So it's internal, right?
Mhm.
So the UE and the G0B connect local. So we didn't have to do anything for it. I don't know whether it's still true here.
So if you click on that link I just put in, that's the diagram I think Eric put together.
Yes,
of
yeah,
that.
Eric, yeah,
Um,
Eric did that. So we have to see how we fit into that, right? And then whether we
Right.
need additional stuff. So that's the whole starting, I think, yeah, or how I
Right.
would like to see it. And then we have to see, okay, what CRDs do we need to get that to make that happen?
Correct.
Which
Correct.
parameters do you need? So that's the type of discussion we can look or start looking at.
Yes, I think
Yeah, it
yeah,
seems
that's
like, yeah, it seems like this one has 2 NADs. So you are, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you create operator, is it config map based, the OAI? This is C or D?
yeah. Right now, what I'm showing is a all-in-one G0B. It's when I selected the option of
G0B.
all-in-one, and for that you have one config map. So there is config map for each of the components.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, this looks like a good starting point, and let's
Yep.
continue the discussion in Slack and in PRs and whatever we need to do. And
Sure,
well,
I'll post this video and the presentation. So I think after that we can start
All right.
on the next steps. Probably, I think how to fit it into the existing FPO deployment, right? So that would be the immediate next step.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And
Right,
and then
right.
figuring out what new problems we
Right.
like what new
If there's something missing that
Yeah.
we need to send, we'll have to look at it. Yeah.
exactly. Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Anything
you.
else on this topic, or should we move to the last item on the agenda?
Yeah, maybe just quick question. Are people aware of any other radio solution we could use besides OAI? If not, okay, that's it. I just
Yeah,
or
for
maybe
open
let's
source, that seems like the only one, really. Yeah.
Tal?
Tal
yeah,
has
Tal,
hands
Tal.
up.
Yeah, it's not to answer this question, but just to add to this topic before we move on. I added a note there that there is an effort, you know, of course, a RAN use case is one that we're all very interested in approaching, right? We absolutely want to expand our use case and our components beyond core. But another aspect of the ORAN integration, which is actively being worked on right now, is infrastructure management, right? A huge part of what ORAN is, it's not just managing the workloads, but also managing the cloud platform, which is annoyingly called O2, or part of it in ORAN. ORAN invents its own terminology for the whole universe, right? So ORAN defines, excuse me if people already know this, but I'm just making sure people are on board. So ORAN defines a very comprehensive how to say, a set of standards for how to create RAN deployments, and a big part of it is infrastructure. And that's also divided into multiple projects. There's something called the DMS, and of more interest to Nefio is the IMS, which is, so imagine something like Cluster API, basically, something like that. That is, it is ORAN's perspective on how to deploy infrastructure, right? And ORAN is also not Kubernetes centric, right? So it tries to be abstract and assume that there can be all kinds of implementations for the cloud and for how to automate and deploy the workloads. So in our case, it could mean, and there's an effort right now going on with, I think everybody who's here on the list, all the companies involved are involved in this too, which is to create a declarative interface for IMS. So historically, ORAN has not been very fast in adopting Kubernetes, right? Because they try to be more abstract. So a lot of the APIs and interfaces that ORAN defines are quote unquote RESTful, right? So they defined all these endpoints with JSON objects and et cetera. We're familiar with those. But obviously, we want something to work in a declarative environment. So, so Red Hat has done a lot of the kind of initial work, because Red Hat has their own cluster deployment system, which is very declarative, but obviously this is of great interest to Nefio, right? And Nefio integration. So we would like Nefio to be, right, an implementation of ORAN eventually, or implement parts of the ORAN interfaces. All this is a long story, right? But we are hoping, and we do want to beef up our infrastructure automation. We did an initial stab of it in R1, but we know it's kind of, very initial at this point. We had some early discussions. People mentioned support for crossplane. I know Red Hat wants to support their own approach to it. Right now we're using Cluster API, which we all know is very limited to. So I don't know how this will all fit in, right? Because it seems that the effort right now is to focus on RAN workloads. Those are probably more interesting for us. But I guess I'm putting as an aside here also the infrastructure relationship to ORAN. It's a separate issue, right? And it could be handled entirely by a separate group of people too, right? It's like unrelated almost, right? Infra versus workload. But I'm just adding it to the list in case people are interested on working on it or have an idea or thinking of integrating it in some way. So yeah, let's just not forget that part.
Yeah,
That's
thanks,
it.
Tal. I think just to add on there, like, I mean, I certainly have an interest in demonstrating provisioning clusters using Google's KCC, which is different than Cluster API, but it's a KRM-based solution, and potentially using Crossplane, and other, there's a few others, but those were the two I would be probably interested in potentially doing, showing those southbound from Nefio. That's a little different than Nefio implementing.
Right, this would be a northbound Nefio, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, there's plenty of work to do.
Yeah.
And let
Now
me
there
make
is,
another-
I mean, to Tal's point, and that's also, by the way, one of the topics, I mean, why I'm presenting tomorrow in SIG 1, I believe, is, I think this is one of the topics that is being raised, is that they want to, I mean, see, if you look what we did in R1, right? We basically said we have a workload cluster and we took some CNIs, right? And we said, this is what the workload cluster can do. And we only focused on that. But there is additional stuff there, right? And so one of the things that which is all in this area, in my view, is that potentially we have to expose more of these things and so on and so forth. So there's definitely an area I think we have to work on one way or another. The question is, which part do we do first, and so on and so forth, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I also sort of want to demonstrate we have we don't need to provision the clusters. They could be provisioned out of band and then discovered by Nefio and populated into our workload cluster list. So I want to demonstrate that as well, right? So there's a lot of, it's just how far we go in all of these different areas and what we have time to do.
Correct.
Yeah, I just want to put, I would put that under the east-west interface thing, right? Our ability to integrate with existing site inventories, right? Which is a big part of the orchestration narrative that telcos have. So we would be able to look at that inventory, already get information about how to reach the cluster. So yeah, I mean, we in a way, I think that kind of relates to what you said before, John, regarding, we have one site per repo so far. Is that the right way to go? Well, are we going to duplicate the entire site inventory that already exists, right? There are a lot of questions here in terms of integration with an existing network management narrative, yeah. So, even the idea as simple as what is the site ID, right? And how do we map it to existing site ideas? This is a huge topic in orchestration, which is not easily solvable, right? The world is basically, sites exist, but we also have to provision something for the site or configure, and who's responsible for that, which system, and how does Nefio talk to those systems if they do exist, right? Until now, we pretty much have Nefio managing everything, which we can't just continue assuming that that's the case. Anyway, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the next topic is yours, Tal.
Yeah. So it's so we had from last week's topic, we talked about what to do with the contribution from Samsung and trying to think how we deal with contributions in the future. So we continue discussing this actually in depth in SIG number 3. I raised the topic last time that it might, it's important to get feedback from SIG number 3 because they work with the repos and the GitHub in our structure. And yeah, I think it was a good discussion. It seems that we all kind of agreed that the best choice would be, so if you scroll down, I actually updated the August 2 kind of blurb with kind of what I kept updating this with our idea of what we would present. It seems that we all prefer to have a separate GitHub group. So when I say all, I know not everybody, but at least in that conversation it was. That's why I'm bringing it back here, just to say that to continue the discussion. And if there are any questions or it hasn't been finalized. There are a lot of lingering questions technically on how to do this, but the idea is that we will separate out. So we'll treat our Nefio project GitHub group, the currently existing one, as our distribution. And basically anything else, which includes experiments, POCs, examples, any contribution that wants to be under the CLA, but isn't, could go there, but isn't part of the distribution can go there. So it would still allow us, as a community to decide, we'll still be gatekeepers for the code, right? We will decide what gets in or what isn't, but it will provide a way for contributions that aren't immediately part of the distribution. For example, Samsung's contribution right now with a Helm translator. And, it gives a lifeline to companies who, not every company is very, it's not always easy to open source an internal project, but companies that are already participating in Nefio have already legally allowed for signing the CLA to their engineers. So it gives a very easy way for them to just put something on GitHub, right? Nefio related, of course, which otherwise would not be easy for them to do, right? Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. It's all written down here, and we've discussed this at length. But I just want to bring it back here to SIG 1, which is where it's SIG 2, to where it started, and see if there's additional feedback or questions or concerns.
It makes sense to me, like a Nefio sandbox or Nefio ecosystem or something like that. I actually also kind of like a Nefio archive and move all the archive things to it, so the Nefio project is a little tighter.
Yeah, that's what we would do as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so that seems sensible to me.
Yeah. So Wim, you
raised
a bunch.
Yeah, I'll just see. It's the same for us, right? I mean, I'm talking. See, there is two ways I look at it. My main concern is the following: is what level of quality and liability do we have with respect to the code? That's for me the big question, right? And because if you look like LFN has a set of quality requests based on the code that we produce, right? Does it fall under that? So that's for me the big question. I'm not saying yes or no. Yeah. The other thing that I'm saying, and that's why I posted, so Samsung has a public GitHub, Nokia has a public GitHub. For me to contribute to Nefio or to a public GitHub, it's the same. For me, there is no difference at all, right? Because, and okay, that's why maybe other companies work differently. That's where I'm coming from, right? And because if we have to do a lot of ISO, a lot of additional work to maintain that code and what have you, I would vote against putting a rep for Nefio, because I rather spend my time on the main core and make that okay. And I'm very happy to get inputs and share repos all over the place and have code from everywhere, right, to demonstrate. And for me, that serves the same purpose at the end of the day. And so that's where my comment is coming from, is are we sure that what we are signing up for, we can really do? I'm not saying yes or no. And if I look to all the parameters, I'm more in favor of just putting a repo somewhere. And I can only speak for myself in Nokia, right? It's the same process. For me, there's no difference between, if I have to build a specific prototype that we didn't approve so far, I have to go to new approval, and whether I put it on Nokia repo or on Nephew, it's the same. I'm just
Yeah,
speaking
I think that all makes sense. You know, if I thought, or if there was any commitment for us for quality, then I would also say no, right? We don't want to add more technical debt than we have. But I'm, you know, at least I'm imagining this as, you know, we have close to zero control. Like we, you know, people contribute the code. You know, if there's bit rot, if it stops being relevant, we can archive it. So we own the code. It's still under the CLA. It's still copyright Nephew authors. We can decide to add or remove, but I don't think we need to have any responsibility for the quality of it, right? I think it should be clearly marked, you know, who contributed it and what it is. And the thing is, it's also a sandbox that could eventually become a real component in FEO, right? So,
but then it will move anyhow. Then it will move, Tal, right? So that's my point. A little bit is like, if we have to move it anyhow, okay, why does it matter?
Well, yeah, why not have everything in a single group, right? Like we have now. I think it's been confusing.
Yeah, saying why not just let people keep it in their own orgs?
Oh, well,
I'm saying keeping it in your own org, you demonstrate it, and all of a sudden, let's say we want to adopt it, we anyhow port it to the Nephew core repo.
Well, there's several reasons why people would want to have it under the Nephew umbrella. You know, they could be personal reasons sometimes to show a contribution, a number of lines of code to Nephew, and why not? You know, we accept it. It is a contribution. Even again, I don't think I see it at least as a garbage pail where anybody can come and put anything they want. We would still decide as a community whether it's relevant or not or interesting. But you know, just it gives another way for people to contribute, or even just to say that they contributed, if I'm very cynical about it. But to yeah, it's a way for us as a project to be generous without having any you know, responsibility for it. So it's kind of yeah, it's a way to find that balance, right? On the one hand, allowing people to contribute, but on the other hand, not going right into the distribution of R2 or R3 or whatever.
But then
there are CLAs, right? If you want people from multiple companies to contribute to it, that's when you start to need it in the central neutral party. Yeah. So like right now, your developers aren't really able to contribute to CAPT because it's in a Google org, right? Like it's a similar thing. If Samsung wants to contribute this and then Red Hat wants to add some things to it and we want to collaborate on for a while to kind of mature it and test it out some more, we might have trouble if it's not in a neutral party. So
that depends, I think, John, on what license you have attached, right? Because, for example,
it's just internal. It's like it's just internal processes. Like at Google, if I'm going to do something, I can do it in a third-party neutral org. I can do it in a Google org. I probably can do it in anything because Google's pretty limited. But if it were my project, if I wanted other people to contribute to it, I would have to put it in Nephew or Kubernetes or somewhere else. I couldn't put it in the Google Container Tools or Google organization and expect, then it's subject to the Google CLA. There's just other nonsense that comes into play.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying it's not, see, we could easily contribute to CAPT if there was a different license under it. You see? So that's the problem. And the problem is not whether it's in the Google repo, the problem is the license attached.
Well, the license text, no, it's Apache too, but the issue is that there's a CLA associated with the Google Cloud organization that you're required to sign.
But that's not the problem. So the problem is that the CLA terms that are being requested, our lawyers basically refuse. Yeah, okay, so that's the problem, right? So that's why I'm saying it's related to the CLA and then the associated license to it. If it would be something our lawyers have no problem with, there would be no problem, is what I'm trying to say.
Correct, but there's an extra process, right? There's extra process. Once a organization's lawyers have approved the Nefio CLA, they don't have to approve the CLA of they don't have to go, oh, Nokia wants to contribute to this Google thing, Nokia wants to contribute to this Red Hat thing, Nokia wants to contribute to this Samsung thing. Then they have to review all those CLAs from all those different orgs. So that's
we don't. Yeah. So for example, we don't use the CLA for our site, basically.
Right.
So
yeah.
But that's yeah. That's what I'm saying is that depends on the.
I think we're going into the weeds a little bit here. I think my point is that there's a bottom line here, and that there's, for whatever reason, internal, personal, a group, we might have people who want to contribute something to Nefio, and it just feels bad to tell them no because it's not on our current direction or whatever. So it's just, it's a way to us to say maybe, right? To say, okay.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, if we make it a very clear, like Nefio-sandbox, right, or some term.
Yeah, that could be a good name.
Experimental, Nefio-experimental, even more explicitly, like, don't rely on this in any way.
Yeah, that's a good name, I think.
Yeah, that's my so that's basically what I'm trying to say is let's define exactly the rules which we play on it, right? And let's be clear what we do and what we don't, right? I'm not 100% against. I just want to say we cannot just do it because everybody was using. Let's at least define what are the guardrails around it. That's my only thing. And for me personally, is that I don't see it. I would continue the way I work. For me, there's no way for me to put my code into there because it's even more problem. I think it would create more work for me than it doesn't. So it's just the opposite what I would like to do.
Right, and there's nothing to stop you from keeping doing things.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, we are over time. I have another meeting in a few minutes. So anything else quick, or shall we call it a day? All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.